Hi, everybody. So my question is, we're learning all these distribution hacks. We're getting more people to come to the site, getting more people to sign up. What happens as soon as somebody hits the sign up button, clicks the sign up button for your app? What immediately transpires, and what do you hope that comes out of it? So whatever that immediate first run experience looks like, I'm already doing terrible. Whatever that first looks like, you're going to hope that they're going to be thrilled with it, that they're going to love your product, can't believe they ever did without it, best thing since sliced bread. Want to shout your name from the mountaintops, basically. It's a customer that is the best friend that you could possibly have. But how did they get to the top of the mountain? How did they go from being kind of curious about your app or struggling with something and signing up for your product and seeing where it was going to take them? Because that's a long journey to go all the way to the top of that mountain. And a lot of people don't make that journey. A lot of times, if you look at the vast majority of companies, the vast majority of the people who sign up for those products never really make it there. And not very many make it even very far into the app. A lot of times you'll look at something like 40 to 60% of the people who sign up for your product never even come back a second time. So how do we increase the survival rate? And that's ultimately what I look at user onboarding as creating a path to get people from one spot to the other more reliably, making it easier for people to become those thriving users that are what you're looking to have and ultimately customers. And then as far as onboarding is concerned, the first run experience itself, I think of, to extend the metaphor a little bit further, how can you get people to have a very first successful first run of the go up the mountain? That basically, can you provide them like with a base camp where they're going to log some kind of success? They're not going to make it all the way there because it's not going to happen all in one trip. But how can you make that first leg something that they can log a success in and use as a springboard for further ventures up the mountain to make it better for them there? So unfortunately, to extend the metaphor even further, we can see the mountain and we can plan out their course and what's going to happen. But when somebody's signing up for your product, they have absolutely no idea what you have in store for them. They're basically kind of playing blind man's bluff. As soon as they click that sign up button, they're hoping that they can stumble into value or something along those lines and trusting you that you're going to guide them there. So to extend the metaphor a little bit further, it's like a really cloudy day or something like that from the user's perspective. And so I'm a really, really big proponent of front-loading that experience as much as possible with a really, really strong signal of how you make their lives better or the kind of improvement that you provide to somebody. Instead of hoping, like a lot of times you'll hear about like an aha moment and people say, oh, if we can just get people into our application, get them clicking around, they're gonna, the clouds will part and they'll have this epiphany about how great our product is. And I'm a really big proponent of not hoping that people stumble into it by clicking around and instead have a really strong understanding of what it is that you offer to them in the beginning so that all of their follow-up actions during this really precious time of their attention are invested in understanding your interface and things along those lines and not trying to reverse engineer the grand meaning of what your app product does for them overall. So I like to front load the aha moment even before sign up whenever possible as opposed to just kind of hoping that it happens after the fact. And I have this visual metaphor that people seem to like where kind of on the left you have the runty Mario and then he encounters the fire flower and becomes bigger fireball throwing Super Mario on the right. And the relevance here is that a lot of times people seem to equate onboarding, and especially the first run experience, with getting people introduced to features or getting people to activate features, more so than getting people to accomplish something or to go into what I call kind of like an upgraded life of some kind. That if you're a kid and you're playing this game and you see a fire flower pop up, you're totally excited, but you're not excited because of anything that has to do with the flower. You're not like, yeah, green stalk, like that's what I'm all about. You're really excited because you know that your ability to go through the game is going to be totally enhanced, that you'll be killing people from afar and crushing walls, and even if you get hit, it doesn't matter because before you would die, but then otherwise you'll just shrink back down, no big deal. It's a totally different mode of going through things and thinking about your product as your business offering, as offering the Super Mario fireball throwing more so than discussing the product itself as being the offering. Couple quick points by example. Intercom, great product, awesome software, but what people really value about it is that it makes them better at talking to their customers. It's a very non-software kind of value that they're providing. Same with Evernote, awesome software, but people really value about it is that Evernote makes them better at remembering things. So that could come in pill form, and people would be just as excited about it. Really doesn't have to do with the software as much. It's very much the same thing with onboarding. So you can kind of think of sending that strong signal of like, hey, fireball throwing at the top of this mountain. This will get people motivated to go through it, and also oriented around, oh, okay, so this is the kind of behavior that I can expect, or the kind of enhancement that I can expect going from there. So that's the aha moment. With that out of the way, now I can actually talk about designing the first turn experience itself and dive into the UI bits and things like that. Contrasting the aha moment with the wow moment is just a shift in mental mode. Aha moment is about getting people to understand something, getting people to get it to click in their heads. The wow moment is getting them to actually accomplish something, where they'd say, oh, like I just actually did that. Not only do I understand what it is that you offer, but I've even accomplished a minor amount of that and some kind of success in that regard. So looking at this first stretch once again, how can we get people to actually move through it and accomplish something, and not just kind of, like when you download an app and there's like the 5 intro screens and everyone just goes bop, 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 and then where do you go from there? So it's actually about getting people to accomplish things, not just understand it. So a lot of times when you click the sign up button, the very first thing that you encounter isn't really the application itself. It's kind of this in-between state where they're asking for setup information or to customize the experience. Basically, fill in these forms, and then eventually we're going to show you what the application looks like. In the case of Netflix, they're kind of leaving the familiar zone of the marketing site and thinking that they're going to jump into the product, but there are these interstitial screens in between. I call them limbo screens, where you're kind of neither here nor there, not really clear on how soon you're going to be out of it. The benefit is kind of like when you're checking out on Amazon and they're like, okay, if you're going to give us money, we're just going to clear everything out. The header's gone, footer's gone, all distractions are gone. You can't even click the logo and go back. Like, just let's get through this. So it's really beneficial from that standpoint. But at the same time, there's an anxiety that's introduced where you're like, should I start kind of getting comfortable here, or eventually are you going to take me to a whole new thing that I'm going to have to learn? So the familiarizing yourself aspect of it is not so hot. But what I really like is the way Quora does it, and you can't see it at all on the screen. But basically, very faintly in the background, you can see that this is actually an overlay of their actual product. And so as soon as you sign up, they're still forcing your focus onto particular discrete activities, but they're also giving you an idea of what's going to be coming eventually. So you can start kind of anchoring around that. And I call that the Emerald City in the distance approach, because you can always see like where you're going to eventually be going. You just have to deal with what's in front of you right now. So let's say somebody gets through the setup process, and then they're able to finally encounter the app. No more interruptions, time to have the rubber hit the road. A lot of times people will introduce their product in this kind of way. Slate's not really a web app, but it's a really good example of what I don't recommend. This almost seems like when you try to clean your house really quick before somebody comes, and then like when you let them come in, you're like, oh yeah, sorry, it's so dirty. It's kind of a similar thing where So first of all, like they're just blocking you from being able to accomplish anything within the application, for one thing. And then they're also literally just like pointing at things where they're like, yeah, sorry. But like, it's also like in the case of the one all the way on the right, it says, our most recent stories live here. Could have been accomplished by like a label that says most recent stories above the content itself. You don't necessarily need to, it's not really adding a lot of information in that sense. It's also distracting your attention. You don't really know where to start. Welcome to Slate's redesign, but then where do you go from there? It's also asking you to memorize things. It's not actually asking you to take actions or to accomplish things. So I'm not a huge fan of tooltips and coach marks as kind of a crutch or as something where you're blasting people with it because otherwise people are just going to be hopelessly lost or whatever that might be. But when you do use them, Optimizely, for example, I think uses them really well. The complete opposite of the negatives that I outlined with Slate. It's a single tooltip at a time. It does not prevent you from taking any kind of actions that you want in the app. It's totally free roam. It's just kind of like a helper. And it's also really action-oriented. So it says, here's how to create more variations. Try it out by clicking Add Variation. OK. And so you'd think like the green button, OK, is what's going to add the variation. But that doesn't actually teach you how to do it. what they really want you to do is click add variation, and they tell you to do that. So getting you to start taking those actions and learn by doing instead of learn by reading, I think is really a really important aspect if you're going to go this route. That being the case, let's say you go through whatever the tour is and you're just left with like the naked interface. Time to get started. We're going to move to that base camp. And you get something along these lines. And this is, I actually really like LiveChat a lot. I don't want to pick on them, but this is a good example of blank states that are just not really very developed. It feels very empty. And it also has kind of an accusatory tone almost, like, you don't have any chats, like, you monster. Like, you know, and of course, like, how could you possibly have any chats at this point? Another one, like, especially anything social, where you, like, the first experience is like, you have no friends. It's just, like, the worst. So, you know, a lot of times what I look for in blank states are making it so that you are, A, welcoming them, like a human would do. Like, basically, like, if this was a person, it would be like this, kind of like, that's not what you want to lead with. But you can contrast that with Basecamp, and like, these are things that I think they're doing really well. One, like a person, they say welcome. That's nice. We're starting to make a connection here. Things are going pretty well. And they also have filled up their interface with content that explains what the interface is. And once again, if you're front-loading it with that aha moment where people already get, like, OK, I understand that I'm managing projects. I get what Basecamp is going to do for my life, help simplify things. Now I just need to learn the interface. And this is a perfect example of how an interface can teach users about itself, basically. So not only do we have a project that's already preloaded, it's called Explore Basecamp. And then when you click into that, beyond that, there are even the elements of the project, like to-do lists, that say, hey, I'm a to-do list. And if you want to delete me, click this button, or move me 3 spots down to know how to sort, and things along those lines. And this really shows an excellent amount of attention and care that was put to the first run experience, instead of just dumping people into an empty dashboard and hoping they can kind of get their way out. Once people are acquainted with the interface, you still want to make sure that they're going to reach that goal that you set for them. You want to make sure that they get all the way to the base camp. So you're looking at something like, in Dropbox's case, it's a to-do list. In LinkedIn's case, it's a progress meter. But either way, you're really just measuring progress or accomplishments and showing basically what kind of momentum people have and how far they've been able to make it in the app. So in Dropbox's case, there are 3 things that have already been accomplished and then 4 that aren't. So they're showing what you've already done. In LinkedIn's case, it's just a bar that's showing the progress. And that's, instead of showing everything that you can do, they're a little bit more curatorial and saying, you know, start with this one thing. But both of these would be roughly the same approach. And one really cool anecdote to share here, there was a study done, and they came up with this effect called the endowed progress effect. And they basically real-world A/B tested loyalty cards for a car wash. And in one loyalty card, they gave zero pre-punches, and they only had to fill out 8. And in another one, they gave people 10 punches that they needed to fill out, but they gave them a 2 booster before handing it over. And so would anyone care to show of hands, 8 versus 10? OK, fair enough. But so 10 was like doubly as effective. Like 10 more people got the free car wash, or twice as many people who got the 10 got the free car wash, made it all the way through. And the idea being, if you are starting at 0, you haven't really started at all. So psychologically, you're thinking, oh, I need to get 8 punches. OK, fine, I'll make my way through it. 10, with the 10 case, where you already have 2 punches, you're 20% of the way there already. You just need to do the other 80%, and you're finished. So the idea that, oh, if you can prime people to say, I'm almost done even, is a great way to get people to do things just to wrap it up, as opposed to starting them at 0%. And you can see this in action, once again, with Quora. I mentioned there was the Emerald City in the distance thing where people were having to fill out that setup information. And this is literally the very first screen that you see as soon as you dismiss that box. Like, this is, as soon as the overlay is gone, this is what you see. And you can see in the top right, there are, it's a 5 to-do list. And 3 of those items are already checked off, and you could not possibly have gotten here without having done them already. And so really, it's a 2-item list that they've preloaded 60% of progress all the way through. So that's a really, really good example of that in effect. And then lastly, actually, I do have to take issue with Quora on one thing, is that they set you up for this success. They say, here's what you need to do, and it's going to be just fireworks everywhere. It's going to be awesome. And as soon as you complete that 5th step, it disappears totally unceremoniously. There's nothing there, no like pat on the back or anything at all. And to contrast that with Shopify, actually, I think they do an absolutely fantastic job of celebrating that success with you and creating a success. It's not even a success state, it's a success page. A MailChimp is another great example. Like it's a really high anxiety moment, you're clicking send, it's going out to thousands of people, and they're literally there with a high five, a picture of a high five that you can click and it will like high five you back. And so like those kind of things I think are absolutely awesome and really, really underrepresented in a lot of product design, that you're working so hard to get people to accomplish things so that they can feel more agency and be, it's a corny word, but empowered in some kind of way. You get all the way there against all the odds and celebrate that with that. That's a great way to build affinity and just let them know that they've done a really good job. So, wow moment being accomplished, that would be the end of the first run experience. But I want to make sure that I do something, I want to give you really, really tactical advice. A lot of times when I work with startups or products that they're kind of like, yeah, I know, our onboarding sucks, it's terrible, but nothing seems to really get done about it a lot of the time. It's just something that's kind of a feeling of unease, but it's hard to prioritize when you're squashing out really critical bugs or trying to launch brand new features that are going to be game changers and things like that. So one thing that I'd really, really recommend is just maintaining a presence in your onboarding experience. I spoke with Nick Francis from Help Scout the other day, and he had a really great way of putting it where even if you're dog-fooding your product, even if you're using your product all the time, you're not dog-fooding your onboarding. You're not constantly signing up for it. The changes that are going out, you don't know how that's really affecting it, and there are all kinds of blind spots of different cocktails, of the recipes, like 3 different updates could result in some totally unforeseen thing happening, in step B of your sign-up flow. So being present there, if you're not going to be actually going through the sign-up process on a regular basis, one really, really big recommendation I have to make, and once again, I did say I really like live chat. Olark is great as well. It just takes minutes to install. Put a chat up just in the onboarding or the first run experience screens, and just be there to hear if people are encountering any problems or if there's any kind of issues that are going on, because not only can you help save the day for that one person, but you can also take that feedback, make product changes, and help untold thousands of others avoid that same problem as well. The last recommendation that I would make, again, it's relatively minimal effort, but there's a concept called concierge onboarding. It's something that you don't need thousands of signups to do. It's not something that you need to scale out, but basically it's looking at what are all the stumbling blocks that somebody is going to encounter when they're going through your sign-up process. For example, Drip is an email marketing company. GetDrip.com. I would really recommend, outside of the product, I would really recommend signing up for it just to see how they approach onboarding and how they approach concierge onboarding specifically. But basically, one of the biggest problems of getting somebody up to speed with email marketing, creating an entire Drip campaign, is just going through the process of creating all that content. And so looking at the lifetime value of a customer, it's totally worth it to offer something where you say, we'll have someone take blog posts of yours, stitch them into a Drip campaign that's going to be ready to go. We'll do this on the house because the economics of having a junior level person put something like that together just to get somebody up and running and seeing the effects of the product compared to the LTV of someone who's a long-time customer is just totally gigantic. So any opportunity that you have to insert yourself into the setup process not only will make it build trust and make it easier for people to want to sign up with you, but it will also really make you very aware of what somebody has to go through. I remember someone earlier said, kind of doing the thing where it's like, this is my car and my commute and my job and my kids, and you get this very little part of their attention. So it really helps put that into perspective of just knowing what all the jobs that somebody has to do to go through your sign-up process outside of your actual screens are, and evolve your product based off of that context. So I also recommend checking out the onboarding book that I wrote. I have a 15% off for all 500 startups, just because I think you guys are very, very cool. It's at useronboard.com/training/500strong. And I think I might have time for a question. I have time for 1 minute of question. And thank you. The gentleman in the blue jacket.
Is there a trade-off in having a persistent to-do list versus having that Netflix just clean and doing this one thing? Currently struggling with that.
So I think the question there, so to repeat the question, it was, do you want to have a persistent to-do list where you're sort of reminding people to take particular actions versus front-loading that experience with required, you have to fill out this form in order to move forward, kind of like Netflix's case. My recommendation there is to lead with value whenever you possibly can. So if you're asking for social security number and the amount of employees at their business before you've even introduced yourself, that's probably not going to fly that well. Like providing some sort of rationale about why it's in that person's interest to provide you with that information to begin with is really big, but also just so is building trust. So if you can get them a certain amount of the way in and then say, okay, and we need to know this for this particular reason to unlock even more functionality, I think that that's really the way to go. I tend to hold off as much as I possibly can. So that's definitely something you also want to test and just see how that bears out for your particular audience. On the flip side, if you do look to kind of emulate what Netflix is doing, the questions that I would ask about what you should be asking at that time are, what are things that we don't need to train people to know how to do? So if you're Basecamp and creating a new project is obviously going to be something that you need to do to begin with and on an ongoing basis, you wouldn't necessarily want to create a new project in its totally own vacant screen, totally devoid of context, because you want people to get to know how to do that. It's also something that you don't want to ask things that aren't going to change that often, or you do want to ask things in the Netflix scenario that aren't necessarily going to change that often. Like if you're asking for street address, it's probably not going to change a whole lot. They probably don't need to mentally map where to go to change that in the future. So I would say typically if it's a low-risk ask, and also something that's going to be relatively set it and forget it, that's when it would be a good candidate for the Netflix example one. Thank you all once again.